President, I would ask unanimous consent for Senator Inhofe and I to speak.
The Senate's in a quorum call, Senator.
Excuse me, Madam President. First, I'd ask unanimous consent to end the quorum call.
Without objection.
And now I would ask unanimous consent, since Senator Inhofe and I want to speak on the same important topic, for us to speak back-to-back for up to 15 minutes total.
Is there objection? Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, we rise together with so many other members of the Senate on a bipartisan basis to strongly support the chemical safety bill, which has passed the U.S. House of Representatives with enormous bipartisan support and is ready to pass here in the Senate. Madam President, this is a long day coming. First of all, this is an element of federal law that has been in dire need of updating. All stakeholders, left, right, and middle, have said that for decades. And secondly, we have been working on this specific bill, this solution to that problem, for over 5 years. I started over 5 years ago with what you would, I think, reasonably characterize as a Republican proposal, in contrast to a clearly Democratic proposal by then Senator Frank Lautenberg. And we had these competing partisan proposals for some time. But in early 2013, we made a very determined effort to try to bridge that divide and come up with a strong bipartisan proposal to achieve two absolutely necessary objectives. One, to make sure we fully protect the health and safety of all Americans with regard to chemicals that are in products that we use every day. That's paramount. That has to happen. And two, to make sure we do it in such a way that allows American companies to remain science and innovation leaders in this important sector of our economy. Now, Madam President, I have to say, when we started these discussions in early 2013, I think both of us, Frank Lautenberg and I, were very cynical about our chances of success. We were miles apart. But we were determined to get this done. We met and negotiated, discussed in good faith. Our staffs did as well. And that led to a real breakthrough, a bipartisan bill to update this area of environmental law with regard to chemical safety in 2013. And in 2013, we introduced the first bipartisan proposal with regard to that. Sadly, Frank Lautenberg passed just shortly after we completed that work and introduced that bill. But I'm very happy that many others took up the cause, led on the Democratic side by Tom Udall of New Mexico. Many others were involved. I see Senator Booker here, Frank Lautenberg's successor in that New Jersey Senate seat. He has been involved. Certainly the chair of our committee, Jim Inhofe, has been extremely involved in the weeds in a positive way and supportive. And that led over these 3 years since the introduction of the first version of the bill to this strong bipartisan bill we have before us that passed the House with overwhelming support. Not many things passed the U.S. House of Representatives with that sort of overwhelming support. I think a total of 12 no votes. Not many things come to the U.S. Senate with this sort of near unanimous or near unanimous support. And nothing in the last several decades in the category of major environmental legislation has done that. And so this is a major achievement, and it's a positive achievement when you look at the substance of the legislation. It ensures proper protection of health and safety for all Americans, because these are chemicals in products that we use and touch every minute of every day that enhance our lives and quality of life. And it's a workable regulatory regime that does it in a workable way so that American companies in this sector, and a lot of them, I'm proud to say, are in Louisiana, can remain science and innovation leaders. That's why it has widespread industry support. That's why it has widespread support among many other groups, including environmental groups. That's why it garnered such a overwhelming bipartisan vote in the U.S. House of Representatives, and that's why it has overwhelming bipartisan support here in the Senate. The Senate version of this bill passed by voice vote. There were no articulated objections to it. It passed by voice vote with very, very strong support. That remains the base of this bill. That remains the heart and soul of this bill. The final version, the bill we're considering now, has been posted online for almost a week under the House rules. That needed to happen. It happened late last week, and that's been publicly available for some time, certainly enough for all members to dissect and digest it. And so I encourage final positive action on this bill to move us forward in a significant way. And with that, I yield to the chairman of the committee, who's been a great leader to advance this cause, Senator Inhofe.
Madam President.
Senator from Oklahoma.
First, let me thank the senator from Louisiana. It's been a long fight, a long time, and of course, I understand that Bonnie Lautenberg, who's been a very significant part of the discussion as we've gone along, that she's here today, that she's living this historic day with us. And I say a historic day because the United States Senate can take the final steps necessary to send the Frank R. Lautenberg Chemical Safety for the 21st Century Act to be signed into law. That can happen today. And today, the Senate can pass a bill with tremendous amount of support. I think the senator from Louisiana articulated it very well. We had individuals from the far right, the far left, all in agreement. I would like to add to that, we have an impressive list of groups that are supporting this, one being the Obama administration, the American Chemistry Council, the Environmental Defense Fund, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Humane Society, National Association of Manufacturers, March of Dimes, American Petroleum Institute, National Wildlife Federation, Alliance of Automobile Manufacturers, Americans for Tax Reform, National Association of Chemical Distributors, and the American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers, everybody. And we're talking about labor unions, manufacturers, very rare. I agree with the senator from Louisiana. I don't recall, in my experience here, ever having this array of support from organizations and people that we have with this. So, yeah, I've been working along with that group since 2012, and then Senator Lautenberg approached me and asked for my help. I think that was the time that Republicans became a majority. No, we're still a minority at that time, but he wanted to have everyone involved in this from the different parties, the different philosophical realms, and that's exactly what happened. So I know my friend Bonnie Lautenberg, as I mentioned, she's here today. I've never seen a bill in process that has garnered the support of someone like, in this case, the widow of Frank Lautenberg. She's there all the time, making sure that this proper tribute that we're going to make today, it becomes a reality. So just some of the, I think the key provisions have been covered already by my friend from Louisiana. And let me just join him in thanking all our friends from the left and our friends from the right for joining together on something that's really good for America. One thing that hasn't been talked about very much is the number of jobs. You know, I talked to a large group of manufacturers yesterday, and they said, we never talk about the jobs. There are jobs that are overseas today because of the uncertainty that is here in terms of how we are treating chemicals in this country. You know, they can't put forth the money that's necessary and the resources that's necessary unless they know that there's certainty that they're going to be able to use whatever chemicals they have to use to produce whatever it is they're producing. So where are they now? They're in China, and they're in India, they're in Mexico. There are places where they don't have to deal with this problem. So that's a major thing that is happening. And let me go ahead and at this point, Madam President, I want to make a unanimous consent request. I ask unanimous consent that at a time to be determined by the majority leader in consultation with the Democratic leader, the chair lay before the Senate the message to accompany H.R. 2576. Further, that the majority leader or his designee be recognized to make a motion to concur in the House amendment to the Senate amendment, that there be no other motions in order, and that there be up to 3 hours of debate equally divided between the two leaders or their designees on the motion. Finally, that upon the use or yielding back of time, the Senate vote on the motion to concur in the House amendment to the Senate amendment with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Madam President,
The senator from Kentucky.
reserving the right to object, one of the pledges I made to the people of Kentucky when I came here was that I would read the bills. This bill came here on Tuesday. It's 180 pages long. It involves new criminalization, new crimes that will be created at the federal level. It includes preemption of states. It includes a new federal regime which would basically supersede regulations or lack of regulations in Louisiana or Texas or Oklahoma. And so I think it deserves to be read, to be understood, and to be debated. And so I object to just rushing this through and saying, oh, you can't read the bill. I told people, everybody involved in this, I just want to read the bill. We've been working on it now for 2 days looking at the bill. We've been talking to people who worked on the bill. Is it not unreasonable to ask that we have time to read a bill? Here's the other problem. Every day in my office, business comes into my office, and what do they say? We're regulated to death. We're sick and tired of regulators from the executive branch that are out of control. So what does this bill do? It takes the power away from the states and creates a new federal regulatory regime. Here's the whole problem. People are now saying, please regulate us, and then when they get over-regulated, they say, please stop regulating us. We should think through how we're going to do things around here. We should take the time to read the bills. We should take the time to understand the bills. So I will continue to object until we've had time to look at the bill thoroughly. With that, I object.
Objection is heard. Senator from Louisiana.
Madam President, let me just say I regret an objection to this very reasonable path forward. No one objects to all members of the Senate reading the bill. I encourage all members of the Senate to read the bill. There has been and is continuing opportunity to do that. As you heard, that unanimous consent request wasn't rushing through anything. It was a 3-hour debate and a roll call vote. The final version of the bill has been publicly available for everyone to read, dissect, and digest for about a week. It is largely similar to the Senate version that passed months ago, to which there was no objection raised. That passed by voice vote. So there is no impediment to everyone having adequate time to read and digest the bill, and the final version has been available for that purpose for about a week. So I think it's unfortunate we can't move forward in this sort of clear, reasonable, and straightforward way, but we certainly will in the near future, and I look forward to that.
Yes, Madam President, I regret that the senator from Kentucky has left the chambers here, because the two things that he mentioned were the criminal provisions and the preemption. The criminal provisions and the preemption have been with us for 6 months, not 2 days, not 3 days, but for 6 months. That's exactly what we voted on way back in December. So it's you can't ask for more time than that to consider the provisions of a bill. The other things are all supporting the two components of the bill, that is the criminal provisions and the preemption. Again, they've been here for 6 months, and I would ask that we have a chance to reconsider. We know this thing is going to pass. We know that when we get back, it will pass. It'll pass because we'll have to go through all the procedures of a cloture vote on the motion to proceed and all of that. So we know it's going to pass. That's not the issue. It's just that if we could do it now instead of 2 weeks from now. There are people making decisions today as to what they're going to be doing and what products they're going to be manufacturing, where they're going to do it, and to put that off for 2 more weeks after we've been working on this for 6 months is not a fair way to conduct business. So I hope that we'll still, later on today, have an opportunity to get this done today. There's no reason not to. Everyone's for it. Every group that I mentioned is for it. And every Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, they're all for it. So this is our opportunity to get it done. And there's still time today to do that. And I hope between now and 1:45, which is the scheduled time for our vote, that that'll be a reality. With that, I yield the floor.